Hi everyone, can everybody hear me? Yep.
Yeah, you come through loud and clear. 5x5.
Today we were wanting to deliver just a little overview on the new Workforce Australia system. But before we get into that, just want to acknowledge the land that I stand on, which is the Kaurna land in Adelaide. And yeah, if everybody wants to say where they're from in the chat, they're welcome to. But yeah, just want to acknowledge that, yeah, we're standing on their land and sovereignty was never ceded. So today is going to be a bit of an overview, like I said, on the Workforce Australia system, but at the end, we're going to have time for Q&A. Hopefully Simone might be able to answer some nitty-gritty questions if she's able to. We're all still learning really about this system, so we might not have the answers on hand, but we'll definitely endeavour to get back to you ASAP if we can. So I guess for the rest of this presentation, I'm just going to turn my camera off, but I'll talk through it and hopefully you guys can follow. Okay, so just give me a moment, please. Okay, if we can just get to the overview section, Daniel, please. Yes, cool. All right, so today we're going to talk a bit about what we do. Everybody in here probably already knows, but nonetheless, we'll just give you a little bit of a rundown. Then we're going to go into a bit of the background on employment services in this country. And then we're going to go into the changes that are happening in Job Active. And then after that, we're going to do a Q&A. And then after that, we're going to talk about how we can push back against some of these changes, hopefully. And then a little wrap up in which Daniel will probably say a few words as well. So slide 4, Daniel, please, the next one. Cool. All right. So if nobody already knows, we are a union that organises and advocates for unemployed workers in the welfare system. So we've been around, since 2014, and we're just basically continuing on, the history in this country of unemployed workers organising. So we're incorporated as an association. We also have charity status, and our main focus is advocacy, so assisting people navigate the job agency system. And we also want to start organising, and if anybody's excited about that, please wait till the end because we will have more about that. Currently, our national team is Tracy Smallwood, who's the president. We've got Daniel Levy, who's the secretary, Jeremy Haywood, who's the vice president and media and comms person. I am the advocacy coordinator, and Jeremy is also assisting with media. Next. Cool. So why we're here basically is because we have this employment services system which carries out the work of the government in terms of compliance and administration for social security legislation, which requires people to do activities in return for their payment. So since the 90s, the government has been outsourcing this work to private agencies and non-for-profits as well to basically administer employment services. And David O'Halloran has said that there have been three functions to the employment services system in Australia. So one is to help people get a job, the second is to help people become more employable, and the third is to engage in some sort of work test. And I'll just repeat what he said, but basically 1 and 2 have declined over the past 25 years. And so number 3, which is, engaging in work tests, has ramped up. So yes, Sasha?
I was just going to say that you
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, just basically a little rundown of employment services in this country. There have been 3 functions to the employment services system, which is 1, to help people get a job. The second is to help people become more employable. And the third is to engage in some sort of work test. I'm just going to repeat what David has said. So basically, number 1 and 2 have declined over the past 25 years. And number 3, which is, engaging in work tests, has ramped up and up. So unemployed people have always needed 1 and 2, which is genuine assistance, but nobody really has got that. And we don't need number 3, which is engaging in work tests. At least that's our view. So next, please. Cool. So a big part of why we exist is because there's a lack of meaningful support for people out there in the unemployment system. So because it's so punitive and complex, people are constantly, coming into trouble with navigating it and knowing the rules and what applies to them. It's really confusing. So that's why our volunteer advocates in the union are key, because they help people do that. And it's also about engaging them to fight back against the system as a whole. And just a little note that we are not mediators or counsellors. Occasionally we have some people come in with legal backgrounds, and that's great. That's really helpful, but yeah, we don't give legal advice. Next. So there are a few things that make up the new system. It's called Workforce Australia. So that's like a general overarching thing where underneath that there sits 2 services, but we'll get into that later. But Workforce Australia basically came about because, the government realised that the existing system was crap and needed to change. So they've endeavoured to do that. And a big part of this new system is digitising it and then also introducing a points-based activation system, which is a different way of managing mutual obligations. So yes, the 2 key things, I guess, in this new Workforce Australia system is the points activation system, and also using the portal, the Workforce Australia portal that's being created to complete a job seeker snapshot, which then sort of refers you to either the online service or the face-to-face service that exists now. But we'll get into that soon. Also part of this system, we've got the employability skills training thing. So that is, training that people can undertake to increase their employability. And that forms part of mandatory activities, and we'll get to that later. But basically, another thing that's part of the system is people have to engage in activities, whether they're online or in Workforce Australia face-to-face services. There was once a requirement as part of mutual obligations to do an annual activity requirement, and that's no longer, and it's being replaced by a SMAR, which is a 6-month activity requirement, which you're meant to do every 6 months for 2 months. Work for the dole, I think we all know about, that's going to be strengthened, and there's going to be an expansion of the National Work Experience Program. Okay, so this system, Workforce Australia, replaces Job Active from the 1st of July, so next week. It's been under development for a while, I guess, but it came about as a result of recommendations that were in a report that said, services should be digitized and streamlined. Daniel, sorry, is the slide there? Yeah. Oh, no, Workforce Australia, sorry. It's at number 8. Nope, I don't see anything. Oh, wait, there it is.
Number 8.
There it is. All right. So yes, Workforce Australia is the new system, and under that you've got enhanced services. I think the terminology's changed now, so it's Workforce Australia, or Workforce Australia Services. Simone will be able to correct me shortly, but yes, we've got normal face-to-face servicing in enhanced services, and then in the online employment services. That's going to be about self-managing, and the points activation system is present in both. So yes, both employment services will have the Workforce Australia portal, where job seekers can get access to that through either MyGov or an app, which is on Google Play and Apple, I believe. And this system is designed so you can track and manage your points target, and we'll get into that shortly. But yes, some, I guess, terminology to look out for is activation, PBAS, which stands for Points Activation System, EST, Employability Skills Training, and the DCC, which is the Digital Contact Centre. Other programs under the Workforce Australia banner include the Transition to Work, the Self-Employment Services like Stream program, and then we've also got the Career Transition Assistance bit, which assists people over 45. But basically, that's the gist of the Workforce Australia thing. There are 2 services that people can be streamlined into. So moving on. Cool. So when somebody connects with a job provider now, say if they're making a claim, a job seeker claim, and they get approved, they're going to be going through like a screening process, a digital one, where you answer a bunch of questions, and then a tool called the Job Seeker Classification Instrument, I believe, will sort of analyze what the goal is with the job seeker, whether they're job ready or not, whether there are any barriers that need to be overcome, and things like that. So the initial process is you make a claim. If your claim gets approved, you complete a job seeker snapshot on the portal. I think it's a MyGov one. Yeah, and then thirdly, individuals are either referred into the enhanced services, so the face-to-face services, or the online employment services. And we've been, the department said recently that at first instance, when people like job seekers are figuring out their job plan, providers are going to be offering and guiding options for activities, and that comes after the job seeker snapshot has done its thing. But yeah, that's just a little intro for you, and moving on to the actual details. So these so I guess I just wanted to give a bit of background, but the key focus for the new employment services model is to promote greater personal responsibility and to maintain a strong mutual obligation system. So that's why they've introduced PBAS, but whether you're in online services or face-to-face services, job seekers are meant to now be getting the benefit of a new online portal and app, a simplified job plan, and a points-based activation system, which removes the general requirement for people to do 20 job searches a month. And I guess the idea behind this, well, the government says, is to have a holistic approach to job seeking. And there are 3 elements they say contribute to this. So you've got the targeted compliance framework, which hasn't changed in this system. Then you've got the points-based activation system, and then you've got a job seeker assessment framework. And so the job seeker assessment framework is meant to be a complementary thing, which sits alongside what providers already use in terms of their tools and systems and assessments. So just to quote the department, it will use enhanced system capacity to grow over time to deliver an enhanced user experience. So it's essentially going to gather data from job seekers and then from there be able to recommend activities. And it's also meant to encourage providers to invest in their people. So the point for this is basically so providers can get a more holistic picture of what job seekers need. Whether this will work, I don't know. We don't really know anything about, the systems that the department has used. So anyway, moving on. Oh, sorry, just a point about the, sorry, go back, Dan. Just a point about the simplified job plan aspect of this system. So the points activation target requirement is going to be in the job plan, and compulsory items are going to be also included in that job plan. It's not going to be necessary to sign it each time I think a job seeker is seeking an update, but I think I'll get Simone to clarify that bit. And the compulsory activities are only going to be added at activation points. I'll get to that shortly, but there will also be the condition to accept and retain paid suitable work and also accept any job referrals. So that's basically the contents of the job plan that people will be assigned. So moving on. Okay, like I said, so the key focus of the new employment services model is to promote, personal responsibility. So the government's decided that a digital tracking thing would be part of this. It's meant to provide flexibility and choice to job seekers when they are activating, meaning when they are doing things to get them employable. And it's meant to be a different way of managing mutual obligations. So yes, the points-based activation system is complemented by new strong activation model, which means that people are going to have to do activities at a more intense level and earlier and more frequently. So basically, that's what that means. With the PBAS, so the points target itself that people have to reach, which is 100 points as a default, and we'll get to how you can reduce that. But basically, there are 100 points that people have to reach a month. And this is going to be displayed in the dashboard or as advised by the provider if you're connected to a face-to-face service. Providers and the digital contact center are expected to tailor the points for people based on their personal circumstances and the labour market conditions. So those are the 2 factors that have to go into considering whether people do 100 points, 80 points, or 70 points or whatever. So part of this PBAS system is also seeking credits to reduce the point target load. Also, an important thing to note about this PBAS system is that there is going to be a minimum job search requirement still. So generally, it's going to be about 5 each month, and participants are not going to be able to meet their 100 points or whatever without completing these job searches. So just, yeah, keep that in mind. Yes, okay, moving on. This is just a graphic about the mandatory activity requirements in this new system for people. And if we can just go to the next slide, Dan, I think I've got like a general high-level overview of the activation points like journey, and you know, at what point you're required to do certain activities depending on whether you're on whether you're in online services or face-to-face services. Everybody can get a copy of these slides later, so I won't go into detail here because I want to get into like the key issues about the mandatory activities. So moving on. Yes, the activity requirements. So for people that are in enhanced services or face-to-face services, there's going to be a mandatory activity that kicks in at 6 months from the commencement of being in this stream. So at 6 months, if people haven't, you know, got work ready, so to speak, then they're going to be required to do work for the dole, which is the default activity. And that's going to be for 2 months, up to 25 hours per week, I think. And that's been shortened from 6 months. So previously people had to do this for 6 months, but now it's 2 months. But you have to do that every 6 months. Basically, you just have to keep busy all the time, I think. And people that start in online services and transfer into enhanced services have to do work for the dole after 3 months. So basically, the activation requirement is basically what participants have to do at a minimum to show that they're, you know, getting ready to join the workforce. So yeah, enhanced services, the mandatory activity kicks in at 6 months, and that could be a work for the dole activity, but I do believe you get the choice of an alternate activity. In online employment services, in that stream, the mandatory activity requirement kicks in at 4 months. And that's the case unless, you know, you or the participant chooses an alternate activity. But the default activity in online services is the EST, which is employability skills training. And if you're working or studying at the time at the 4 month point, you can do a learning module instead. And you also have to complete 5 job searches a month. Okay, and we'll go to slide 16, I think, which is meeting the points target. Yep. So this is a screenshot from a recent webinar with the department, and I believe this is how the dashboard will look. Each person ideally should have their tailored points target, and that will be shown in the dashboard. Then you'll be prompted to undertake or participate in activities, and that will be on the dashboard too. I believe this dashboard or system actually notifies people of when their points are due as well, but can get to that after. Moving on. Oh yeah, and that's apparently how the app is going to look, or the dashboard on the app version is going to look. So next one. To meet your points target, you can engage in a range of activities, and each, depending on what you do, they'll have a point like a point value assigned to that. So completing a job application is worth 5 points. So if you do, 5 of them, you might do okay, but it also depends on your total points target that is tailored to you. The full list of activities and what's what is in that link. But a criticism that we have had, that we've put to the department, is that people that are working full time are not going to get very many credits, or even part time. So you're still going to be made to do all these activities and run around and do busy work, which it's not helpful at all. So yes, everybody can take a look at that in detail when they've got some time, but just because I don't want to blab on forever, I'm going to keep going. So just a note on the PBAS. It's apparently meant to have some safeguards. So people can contact the Digital Contact Centre for support if they're having trouble or if they want to tailor their points. Yeah, there will be also a participation interview. I think that happens after the snapshot. I'm not sure. Sorry, Simone might have to clarify me on that. But yes, apparently there are going to be safeguards attached to this PBAS system. Oh, and most importantly, you need a MyGov account to access this. So if anybody hasn't got one, please endeavour to do that. And cool. So with the PBAS, additionally, we've got an important thing to notify you of, which is with face-to-face servicing, you're also expected to self-report. So you're meant to self-report attendance at activities, put down that you've done your job search or whatever, even though you're connected to a provider. But if for some reason you can't manage the self-reporting on Workforce Australia portal, you can get the provider to help you report. So that's apparently a safeguard for people that might have technical difficulties. But yeah, so just important to note that if for some reason somebody can't do the self-reporting with the digital system when they're connected to face-to-face services, the provider must take out the self-reporting requirement in the job plan, and they have to help the job seeker manage their points tracking and reporting. And I've put a link there to more information about the points system, and that's on the transition webpage the department's created. With the online service, again, people are expected to self-manage and report on there. And if a person in the online system wants credits to reduce their points target, then they need to contact the Digital Contact Centre to seek any relevant adjustments. Also, an important thing to note is that providers must tailor the points target. So that is either done through the Digital Contact Centre or through assistance by the provider. And providers can credit job seekers for up to 6 reporting periods. Okay. So there are some important things to note after all of that. So basically, your points must be tailored, and you have a right to reduce your monthly target, on account of personal circumstances and or labour market conditions. For example, if somebody lives in a rural area and there are no real opportunities, you can, that's recognised now in the system, apparently. But it's also worth pointing out that it's going to be the same, harmful providers that are administering this. So I'm just wondering how much pushback they're going to give to job seekers. when trying to tailor their circumstances. Anyway, so the second point here is that mutual obligations for now are suspended until the 3rd of July. And that suspension began on the 20th, so 2 days ago. And that's for DES participants as well, not just job active. Also, participants in the face-to-face service who are on part income support because they might work casually and who are over 60 years old can't be put into work for the dole activity. You can only participate in that on a voluntary basis. So yeah, older folks, please be aware of that. Another thing that providers must provide is trained staff. So they can't have staff not correctly applying the targeted compliance framework, which is the framework which, deals with the penalties and suspensions of payments. So providers are going to be expected to apply that correctly. And if they're not doing that, or you suspect that, they're still not understanding the rules and the system they're working with, please let us know, because it's really important that the department knows whether this system is working or not. And also, very importantly, there is support available to understand this new employment services model, apparently. So there is a transition line that you can call, and the number for that is 1300 854 414. And there's also an email address that people in the online services can contact. And also part of the new system in Workforce Australia is to be, is for providers to be guided by a set of principles, which are meant to be simple, supported, connected, and respectful. So that's what you should expect from your provider, and hopefully we can see some improvements. But yeah, it's kind of like up in the air. It's just kind of who knows. With the transition stuff, moving on. So there has been a transition period. The transition, I think, technically from the department's side began in May of this year. So they've been sort of, doing things in the background with their IT systems and things. And there are set guidelines for this transition stuff as well. But participants are going to be either referred to a new provider, or they're going to stay with their existing provider, or they're going to be shifted to online services. Generally, I think people that are like in stream A are going to be able to self-manage in online services. I think, I don't know how many of you have got communications about this system, but yeah, it only actually started coming out very recently. So maybe that's why you've only seen things recently. But moving on. Oh yes, a recent update from the department the other day was that the caseload for job seekers had been allocated to providers, meaning that participants have been allocated to the most suitable providers and service and closest to their home, they reckon. So there are still going to be some changes, and I think there's going to be a specific time period in which job seekers can choose where to go, and I think that's going to be from the 4th to the 15th of July. So the next slide is basically, again, like updated info on the transition stuff and what the department has said about where you're going to go, whether it's on an online service or face-to-face. So yeah, that's the next slide, but you can just skip that one. And then we have some more information on timelines on when the department was expecting to have things done by. So, things like communications and, just ensuring that providers are ready to service people from the 4th of July, which is when the system begins. Oh, yes, and also another thing to note with the transition is that client records are going to be moved from one provider to another if people are switching. So that entails, information like the personal details of the job seeker, such as the name, address, and date of birth. And there's going to be details on the results from the job seeker classification instrument results. And there's going to be the previous, any previous job plans that have been signed or completed and compliance history. So those are the things that the new providers might receive from the old providers. Okay, I've sort of rushed through all of that, sorry, but yes, we've come to the Q&A section now, and if anybody has
Do we? Oh, sorry.
yeah,
Yeah. Do we want to get Simone in?
yes, we do.
Hi there, I'm here.
Hi, Simone.
Great job, Raquel.
Thank
Really
you. Well,
comprehensive.
I would like you to sort of see if you can answer any questions, but if not, that's okay, because like I said, we are all still learning this system, and I think they've changed a few things recently too, so it's still confusing.
Yep, that's right. Even for us, they're supposed to be experts on this. So do you want to look at the questions that are coming up?
Okay, so Daniel, how should we do this, you reckon? Because I didn't see the chat until now, and I can't see if it's a question or not.
Thank you. Yes, I've been sent by Centrelink a job plan that is current until the 23rd of June next year, I think, that requires that I do 30 hours of voluntary work a fortnight. I'm well and truly over 60. I've also, just as of today, been sent a very confusing email to say that I've been assigned to a mob called Global Skills as a job provider, presumably. I've been doing volunteering as an income support recipient for about 6 years, I think. Has that changed?
I can respond to that.
Who's asked?
I'm Simone.
Simone?
Hi, Joe. Yeah, look, it sounds to me like you're what they call fully meeting your mutual obligation requirements. So you should actually
That's
be.
what it says. That's what the piece of paper says from Centrelink.
Yeah, so you should, although you kind of notionally attached to a new Workforce Australia provider, they should basically leave you alone because you are on like an exemption because you're fully meeting your requirements. And my understanding is the letters that the Department of Employment sent out last, as in most recently, were to the batch of people that were currently on exemptions because they were either fully meeting their mutual obligations as you are, or we're on an exemption because of like temporary incapacity or something like that. So
in effect, it's not actually an exemption. It's a legitimate way to meet one's mutual obligations.
yeah,
The system, as I understand it, and as I've been experiencing it, is that I've been attached to a job service provider, and each year I renew the form, and they then tick it off, and I then I'm just assigned to Centrelink in effect. because
sweet.
I'm eligible to meet my mutual obligations because no one is going to employ me at this point. I will be 65 in August. Who is going to employ someone who, by government policy, has been rendered unemployable over the last 10 years? I mean, that actually makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where I currently volunteer, I'm more likely to get a job than I've ever been. But as I understand it, that part of the system, in effect, hasn't really changed.
That's right. You're right.
You're assigned to a job service provider of whatever brand. You fulfill your requirements by volunteering 30 hours a fortnight because you're over the age of 60. And therefore, there's no work for the job provider to do because you're doing volunteering. Am I interpreting it correctly?
Yeah, you totally are.
Ah,
Yeah, totally are.
excellent. Great. So I don't have to go back onto the suicide watch list.
No,
Great.
I think it's an important point to ensure that those existing provisions continue, that there's not some kind of slip up in the process of introducing this new Workforce Australia. So I'll be very interested to hear if there are changes, but I do believe from the information that I've seen that those what they do call exemptions within the kind of provider system should still apply.
Oh, right. Exempt, whatever word you want to use,
Yeah.
that's fine. If I'm exempt, I'm exempt. If you want to call it that, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should I contact you if I have difficulties?
Sure. I think Raquel will give out contact information at the end of the session if you can stick around.
Yes.
Because you're at
Yeah.
ACOSS.
I'm at ACOSS, yeah. So I don't want to kind of, hijack contact that people might want to make with the union. But yeah, I'm very interested in focusing on what happens in this transition. So I'm happy for people to be in touch with me as well as with the union.
I'm very happy to report to the union as well.
Well, union, please advise.
Sorry?
I was just calling one of the union comrades to the speaker to get their preference.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. I can also email David O'Halloran if that's of use. I know he's done quite a lot of research in this area.
Yeah.
He is still, as I understand, doing some research for the union. Yes, no? Oh, yeah. He's fantastic. He's great. I've not been in contact with him for a long time, but he was at the launch of a report. Well, it was a series of accounts by people, and I was included in that. This was a long time ago. This is when my local member was still Malcolm Turnbull. And there was a launch of the report down in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I spoke with him then. That's the reassurance that I needed, because none of the information that I've hunted around for makes it clear that for people over 60, mutual obligations can be fulfilled by doing that voluntary work. The information on the site still says that, but no one, how are we to know? Has work approved that information on the site? Is it current? Has a statement been made categorically that people over 60 will in fact no longer be tortured.
What are you talking about? The Services Australia website?
Yes, I think so. It's just when I Google mutual obligations.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, there are issues with the communications coming out of the department. I think, and anyway, the information they produce around all of this stuff is confusing anyway. So we actually do want to try get some key bits of info out as this system is being rolled out. So key info like, you know, volunteering on in Job Seeker if you're over 60, like that type of thing. So please look out for that. Because yeah, we do understand that there needs to be more clear information accessible to people. So yeah, good point.
That's critical. Of course. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Okay. So I've got. I'm currently working 15 hours a week, which is the 30th fortnight, and I'm studying. Will I still, if I carry those to my job provider, because previously my job network said, all right, well, if you're start working 15 hours a week, that's fine. Now I've added to that some study. Will I still have to search for 5 jobs per whenever, even though I'm doing that full workload? Like the study is technically full time, so theoretically I could go on to AUSS study. I just don't want to.
Yes, that just sounds like you're doing heaps, actually. The number of hours that you work that to be fully meeting your mutual obligation requirement, as we were talking about it before, depends on your age, but it also depends on your whether you've been assessed as having partial capacity or if you're a carer. So again, in terms of Raquel's noting the gaps in information for people, I think it's important for us to be able to sort of put out some information about, you know, what age, you know, how many hours work, whether you have partial capacity and so on this question of being fully meeting your requirement. So I won't be presumptuous and ask you your age.
This one, I'm 38.
Right, or you're a young'un.
Yeah, theoretically.
Yeah, right. And well, the other factor is whether you've been assessed as having partial capacity to work. So again, that's something you don't have to disclose.
I think I'm just on the 3MC, so.
Yeah, so it's the 20, I think, well, I'll have to double check, but it could be 20 or 25 hours of paid work if you're under 50, and but in combination with full-time study, you're enrolled in what they call an approved course. You should be fully meeting your mutual obligation requirements. But again, another one that we need to get some clarification on.
Yeah, the point system's really confusing and just seems quite punitive, really.
Yeah. When did you get your letter? Was it recently or was it a while back?
My letter?
Did you get a letter about going to Workforce Australia?
I think I got an email.
Okay, yeah, an email.
Bear with me a sec. Oh. An email. No, I can't see. I didn't even get an email. I just had a look on my job active page, and they said, "Oh, you've been transferred to Morley," which is not a convenient suburb for me to go to, but that's all right. I won't take any more of your time. Thanks for answering the questions to the best of your ability.
Hi everyone. So it was only just with the email from you guys that I realized that this was happening. So I didn't get much notification to begin with. Because I've been the nominee for my dad who's on the verge of I think he's almost eligible for the pension, but he's in that in between state. And I'm actually currently on, I think on DES, and I haven't heard much from my provider about what's happening for next month onwards. I'm just like really much like in the dark about what's happening because see my dad's currently like he's pretty much I think in stream A, so I see that transition up, but I'm not so sure about what's happening with people on DES.
Yeah. So these changes are only going to affect people in job active. So the job active stream of employment services, basically there are two broad streams. You've got the regular service, which is the job active, and now it's changing to Workforce Australia. And then you've got the separate disability employment service, which for now isn't going to change. I don't think, Simone, but I think there are planned changes happening or coming. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just DES at the moment. I think we just have, Workforce Australia at the moment. I think we just have to wait and see what happens with DES over the coming year. No, I think Workforce Australia app and the Workforce Australia brand so far only applies to programs that are run out of the Department of Employment. So Disability Employment Services is run out of DSS, which is Department for Social Security, Social Services, sorry. So they're in separate departments, and there are reforms to DES going on this year, but because of the change of government, they'll probably be delayed, I think. So, you know, a lot of the things that happen in Workforce Australia will probably provide some kind of, you know, feedback, I suppose, on, you know, how the changes have gone down and how they've affected people. And that will probably inform some of the decisions they make about DES later. At this stage, I don't think there's an intention to bring DES back into the Department of Employment. So for now, I just think anybody in DES, you know, don't worry about it. It's only people in Workforce Australia. Yeah, I think they'll stay on the Job Active app because like the interfaces will need to be quite different between the, you know, reporting job searches and versus reporting points. So I think they'll be running the two apps in parallel. Now, I do think it is incredibly confusing because the branding of the providers, some of them are DES providers and some of them are Job Active or Workforce Australia providers. So you might go to your DES and see Workforce Australia brands on it. So you'll think you're in a Workforce Australia like system, right? But yeah, so I don't think that one's been thought through particularly well. But the key message
because
is
because the thing is that the systems are meant to be well but they did say that they went to streamline it, but it doesn't really make much sense when you've got different requirements for different people. So the whole logic just doesn't make sense to me. Yeah. Anyway. So yeah, I probably might have to just check in with my provider and see what's going on with how they're organizing I suppose in this transition. Because as I said, at the moment I haven't received anything from them.
Yeah, and if you're DES, you shouldn't be receiving anything from them, but I think they should be able to kind of clarify things for you if you've got questions. And did you say that you had some concerns about your elderly father as well?
Well, yeah, because he's in that transition period between, because he is in his mid-60s, and I think he's about a year out from being eligible for the pension. So so I'm actually currently his nominee for dealing with the Workforce Australia stuff, and I'm just concerned that with the transition over to the new system, that it might be a bit hard for him because he doesn't actually speak much English, you see. So I think his transition over to online service stuff, and I'm just a bit concerned about people who may not necessarily be able to do the online stuff, in part because either one, they don't have internet access, or they are not really proficient in English or something like that. So yeah, it's just something that just came to mind.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I think that's a really good point. Is we're very concerned about, you know, how accessible the changes are to people who don't have English as a first language. You know, how confusing all of the letters are for people, you know, and whether the kind of options they have not to use online services are clear to them. So be very interested in getting feedback from you on, you know, how that goes for you and your father, as you look, you know, being the nominee for your father.
Yeah, I know, because I know it's already hard enough for even in the current system where I had to help report on behalf of him for his job provider, but in this new system, I'm just navigating through things that I have no idea about. So yeah, I think it will be. I just hope there might be some clarity on it, but it's just at the present time, it's just a fog.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. That was like a really interesting bit of feedback.
All right, thanks.
I just want to jump in. I think there was a question before. Can you clarify both work for the dole over 60 and also if you are starting your own business, if that is going to get points, please? Now, this is where I'm a little bit confused because I think you can do your own voluntary activities as part of your, you know, mutual obligations points thing. And that's going to count for something. I'm not sure how much. I don't think it's a lot if you kind of just do your own thing. But I think for specific self-employment stuff, I think that's a different thing altogether. Is that correct, Simone?
So can you repeat the last bit of that question?
So the question was, so there was two parts, but the last part was, the second was, if you're starting your own business, if that's going to get people points. So if you're just in Workforce Australia, and say you're like a full-time or have full-time requirements, can you do self-employment stuff, or do you have to be streamed into the self-employment program?
Okay, I think I've seen that self-employment is on like the points system. So on the table of actual points, things that you can report, self-employment is on there. And the reason I got distracted because I was trying to jump back to the points table information on the Job Active, the job search website, to see how many points per, you know, per hours of work of self-employment you can claim. And self-employment's always been a bit complex, I think, with Centrelink, because you also have to do a you know, budget, like how much you expect to earn, you know, from your income you expect to get, and that sort of also averages out as the source of the number of hours that you're likely to be working for that period. So there's kind of always been a correlation between your you know, your budget, you know, the budget for your business and the number of hours that you are working. And I'm not quite sure how they, you know, will use the points system to verify, you know, that you have been working that number of hours. But yeah, look, in simple terms, yes, you can put down self-employment hours as your points.
Okay, so that, can I speak?
Mm-hmm.
That was my question. So basically, I'm actually studying at the moment, but my study ends at the end of the year. So I'm also watching this because my son will be getting transferred over to the new system because he's studying full time as well, but he can't get. He's on youth allowance, job search. So if we start a business next year and go on, and we're still getting Centrelink benefits, we can still claim that we're working, but we're not earning money. What happens in that respect? Or is that something I'm just going to have to wait and see?
Linda, we can try give you an answer to that question. It's a specific one, and I don't think I've got the answer off the top of my head. It's a bit tricky, but I can get back to you for sure.
And the other question I have is, if you're over 60, I just thought you mentioned something that you don't have to do work for the dole.
No, it's voluntary.
Voluntary. You might as well go and work if you're going to do work for the dole.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. That's all.
Welcome. Are there any other questions?